Hello, everyone. I'm certified natural healthcare practitioner Erin Thole, and I have Colton Thayer from Wei Labs here with me today. And we have a really good video planned today. We're going to be talking about the thyroid, ins and outs of thyroid, what makes thyroid dysfunction happen in the body, and how we can balance it out, correct these issues, all that good stuff. So this is a really good one. So there's a lot of people that are kind of in the dark with this topic. Hey, Colton, how you doing?
Aaron, hi, I'm good. I am good. It's a great
Good.
day to do
Excited.
thyroid.
What was that?
Yeah, it's a great day to do the thyroid training here and see what it's all about because
Yeah,
it's confusing. A lot of people
it
don't
is.
understand it or what's causing the issues or what to look for.
Exactly. Yeah. I talked to a lot of people who are on a thyroid medication, have been on thyroid medication, their dose keeps on getting, tinkered with and stuff like that. And they've been on it for decades, and they're like, either one or two things. I hear two different things. Either I'm on this thing because I know that my thyroid isn't functioning well, but I don't think it's doing anything because I don't feel any different. Or on the flip side of that, you have people that say, I've been on this thing for years and years and years, and I feel like I need it because it helps with my brain fog, or it helps with my energy level or something like that, but it doesn't fix all the issues associated with a thyroid disorder. So they're only getting like one or two things, checked off the list, but their thyroid is still dysfunctional, even if those numbers are being kind of like pushed into range. Um, which I guess is kind of where we should start is, those thyroid lab ranges. So you're kind of skewed right from the beginning when you go into your doctor and you're like, hey, I think there's something going on with my thyroid. I have, low energy. It's hard for me to lose weight. I can't focus. I'm cold all the time. My joints hurt, some of these different, my hair is falling out, some of these different, thyroid symptoms. And then they do a TSH test, thyroid stimulating hormone. First of all, thyroid stimulating hormone is not a thyroid hormone. It is a pituitary hormone. It's sent from the pituitary gland to the thyroid to tell the thyroid how much thyroid hormone to make. So like your T4, free T4, things of that nature, which is then sent to the liver to be made into, hopefully, free T3, your active form of the hormone that then, does the thing that we want the thyroid hormones to do in the body. So if your TSH number is off, that doesn't necessarily mean that the thyroid is the root of the issue. Could be that the pituitary is the root of the issue, and we need to get that on track, and then the thyroid will act accordingly. When they do these thyroid panels, it's not very scientific, unfortunately. So the number that you're getting back on your report is your number, but the ranges are based on the average person that gets tested in that lab over like the course of a year. So they're not scientific at all. So if all of us are going in to get our thyroid tested because we think something is wrong with our thyroid, why on earth are they taking the average person that's getting their thyroid tested and calling them well? We all think something's wrong with our thyroid. So shouldn't we be using scientific evidence that shows where a healthy thyroid functions optimally to make that range?
Weird.
One would think. So that's why that range is so broad. Oftentimes you'll see the in range reference be, 0.8 to 4.0, which is a really broad spectrum. Not very many people are going to fall out of that unless their thyroid is in like complete dire straits and they've had a lot of issues for a long time. So a lot of people have what's called subclinical hypothyroidism, where their thyroid is within that range set by the lab, but it's still not optimal. It's not functioning correctly. So in the functional medicine world, we use reference ranges for the thyroid that are scientifically proven to be where most people's thyroid functions optimally. So a TSH number should be 1.8 to 3.0, somewhere in between there, 1.8 to 3.0. That's where we want that TSH number to be, that thyroid stimulating hormone coming from the pituitary gland to the thyroid to be like, hey, wake up here, let's make some things happen. And then there's, we have functional ranges for the T4, the free T4, the free T3, and things of that nature as well. But that's kind of like the one that we really want to look at and make sure that that is in range first. And then it's kind of like a trickle down effect from there. So if you're looking at your lab report and things are looking in range, I would encourage you to compare them to those functional medicine ranges and see where you stack up, because a lot of people, they've been taking thyroid medication forever and they're still not really in range. They're not functioning the way that they should be. So we have to look at that pituitary component. Your pituitary is a gland that's in the brain, and it's one of those master glands that kind of governs a lot of other things hormonally within the body, all your other glands and things like that. So it's going to talk specifically to your thyroid and to your adrenals. So if the pituitary is off, there's usually an adrenal component along with the thyroid component. Sometimes there's an insulin component with that as well, or some kind of sex hormone issue, specifically estrogen. If there's estrogen dominance, or you're not detoxing estrogen out the correct metabolic pathway, that prohibits those thyroid hormones from being made into their active form. And they're being made into their active form in the liver and in the gut, a little bit of both. So we really want to kind of take into consideration everything that's going on and not just go off of this one number. I want to figure out root cause, like why is this happening in a person's body? So we want to look at the pituitary. We want to look at the adrenals. Do you have adrenal fatigue? The thyroid and the adrenals talk to each other very, very closely. So if the thyroid is off and there's an adrenal component, it's more than likely that your adrenals have been off far longer than your thyroid has been off. And now we're just kind of, domino effect kind of thing. One goes and then eventually they all go kind of thing. And then we also have to take into consideration the gut component. So 9 times out of 10, when the thyroid is wonky, there's going to be a gut component. There's going to be a liver component, because that's where those hormones are made into their active form. And I know, Colton, when you guys work with thyroid, in your thyroid protocol, you have a lot of liver support in that protocol, like the Brown and the LC balancer and things like that. So you're really working to get to that root, like nourish those organs that are really making those active forms of the hormones for the thyroid, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, you got to look at root cause. You got to look at balancing the whole system out, right? And as we're looking at this, could be adrenal, could be a hormonal thing, could be pituitary, could be the thyroid, could be a lot of things, right? So when we do it, you got to just look at, well, where's the weak spot? Because if you just do a TSH test, I mean, what all shows up on that panel? Like, what all am I seeing? Is it just the TSH, or?
I see a lot, the vast majority of people, where I'm like, do you have a thyroid panel? Can you send me a thyroid panel? They're like, oh yeah. And they send me a TSH test and that's it. And I'm like, where's the rest of it? So then I'll have them go back and have like a full thyroid panel done. If their doctor won't do it, it's very simple. We can, that's actually a test you can order yourself. You can go to requestatest.com and type in thyroid panel, and they have a whole comprehensive thyroid panel that will pop up, and you can order that yourself. You don't even need me to order that for you. And what we want is we want the TSH number. We want the free T4, the free T3. We want reverse T3, And we want both forms of the thyroid antibodies. So thyroglobulin antibody and then TPO antibody. So we can see, like, is there an autoimmune component? And oftentimes people float in and out of autoimmunity with a thyroid issue. They might have antibodies now, a few months from now, those antibodies go away. Then a couple months after that, the antibodies come back up. And their symptoms will kind of like ebb and flow, and their prescription is going up and down, and you can't find that balance point. And that's typically coming from chronic infections in the gut. So if there's an autoimmune component, there's always a gut component. And then there has to be a driver, like some kind of toxicity, driver. So whether that's chemical infection, in the case of thyroid autoimmunity is the most likely. Things like Epstein-Barr and things of that nature are super, super common with thyroid autoimmunity and things like that. So if you're constantly like ebbing and flowing, antibodies, no antibodies, antibodies, no antibodies, and or your medication, we're upping your dose. Oh, that's too high. Let's decrease your dose. Oh, let's try somewhere in between. Oh, that's still too high. Let's drop it back down. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, let's ride that out. And then you ride that out for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden that's too high or too low. And you're constantly like going back and forth. Like the root cause is not being addressed at all. And there is some kind of infection, like I can almost guarantee it, that there's some type of systemic infection that's going on in the gut, potentially in the liver, that's really causing that chaos within the thyroid. So we want to look at the gut. Is there a leaky gut? Is your body just overreacting and attacking any food that you eat as a foreign invader? Almost like your food was an infection, is kind of how your body perceives it when there's that autoimmunity and there's that leaky gut component. And it's hard for you to digest, your nutrients and utilize those nutrients and things like that, because that intestinal lining has become eroded. You have something in your gut called villi, which is like the shade carpet looking guys that absorb all of your nutrients. But if the gut is leaky, it's really irritated and raw, and there's a lot of inflammation, and that shade carpet gets worn down to look like hardwood floor. And then it's really almost impossible for your body to utilize nutrition, which is then going to kind of like starve the thyroid, or if people have like gallbladder issues, like we work a lot with gallbladder issues and liver congestion and things like that. People don't have a gallbladder, or their gallbladders don't work very well. A lot of times a domino effect from that would be years down the road, you're diagnosed with a thyroid disorder of some kind. And that's because your gallbladder is needed to release that bile, so you can digest and assimilate your fat soluble nutrients. Bile's a fat emulsifier. Also contains a lot of lipase, which is a fat digesting enzyme. If that's not working right, and that gallbladder is gone, or there's a lot of bile congestion and your body's not digesting those fats well, how are you going to absorb your fat soluble nutrients that help to drive the thyroid and help the thyroid to function? So your vitamins A, D, E, and K are going to be vital for your immune health, your thyroid health, your mental health, like all those things, antioxidant function within the body. So a lot of times we see a lot of different issues once the gallbladder is gone, or if there's a lot of gallbladder congestion. But one of those main things is the thyroid kind of going down the tubes. So, I mean, there's things that we can do to support that. Like if your gallbladder is gone, that doesn't mean that, you're doomed or anything like that. There's a lot of things that we can do to help kind of supplement what the gallbladder would be doing, to help, because you still have bile ducts like on your liver.
Yeah,
so
it still secretes bile, but if your liver gets bogged down.
Exactly. Once the gallbladder's gone, it's easier for the liver to get even more bogged down. And it probably was bogged down before the gallbladder even got snipped out. So we still need to, a lot of times, and we've done this numerous times, like do a gallbladder flush on somebody that doesn't have a gallbladder. And it's like,
it flushes out the bile ducts.
Amazing. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Just getting that bile moving so that they can actually digest fats, hormones. You know, your hormones are really driven by protein and fat. So if your body's not digesting protein and fat well, you're not getting enough of the right protein, you're not getting enough of the right fats, there's going to be some problems. And then especially with autoimmunity, but not always, sometimes even with people that don't have thyroid autoimmunity, that reverse T3 number is vital to know, because we want to know that reverse T3, which is a mutated form of free T3, and free T3 is like the driver. That's the active form of those thyroid hormones that give us the benefit, basically, of the thyroid, you know, make you feel good and energized, and your brains turn on, and your metabolism works appropriately, you're not freezing your butt off all the time, and, you know, all of those good things. So if there's too much of that reverse T3, that mutated hormone in the body, that's typically stemming from liver and gut dysfunction, primarily liver. Like if there's a lot of congestion and just like gnarly stuff going on in the liver, could be infection. You're going to have way too much of that reverse T3, and it's going to start clogging up those receptor sites on the cells that need that free T3 to work properly. And so a lot of times your blood test, doctors usually don't test reverse T3 because they don't know what to do with it, because they don't practice functionally, you know? So no matter what your panel looks like, if your free T3, or I'm sorry, if your TSH number is off, it doesn't matter what anything else looks like. The protocol is always the same. Here's your levothyroxine or your Synthroid or your Armor, you know, be on your merry way. Let's see how this works for you. See me again in 3 months, kind of thing. So they don't really care what those other numbers look like because it doesn't change their protocol. So that reverse T3, if it's clogging up those receptor sites on the cells, your free T3 might be in range or even high. And then your PCP is going to be like, oh, this is working. This is fine. Your free T3 is higher than it should be. Like you should have boundless energy and you should be thin and, you know,
Yeah.
rocking on all cylinders here. But that free T3 is high because it doesn't have anywhere to go. It can't get into the receptor sites. So it's just floating around in the blood, looking for somewhere to go, because that reverse T3 is beating it to the punch. It's getting in there before the free T3 can. So we have to look at that ratio of reverse T3 to free T3 and make sure that that's correct. And if it's not, then we know, hey, we need to really focus on liver, infection, the gut, to help the body not be making so much of this mutated form, get things under control, like from the root of it, you know, instead of just trying to like supplement thyroid, because a lot of practitioners will even, you know, like work on the gut a little bit, but then let's just throw a bunch of glandulars at you, some selenium, you know, iodine, things that are good for thyroid function, without actually addressing why the thyroid is malfunctioning, or not even necessarily a thyroid gland, but the thyroid hormones are malfunctioning in the first place. They're not getting where they need to be. So we're always trying to like figure out why this is happening and address that, so that eventually all this stuff will unravel itself. So oftentimes I don't give people really much of anything for the actual thyroid. We might later on to help build the thyroid back up, because it's kind of been beaten up and taken through the ringer. But first we have to address the root cause, address the liver, address the gut, address the adrenals, the pituitary, you know, things like that. And then, you know, nourish the thyroid a little bit. But we need to put out the fire before we bring in the construction crew and start building everything back up, you know?
Of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so much with the thyroid. And then I think we talked a little bit about estrogen, you know, like if there's estrogen dominance, going on, or inappropriate pathways. Your body is utilizing a super inflammatory pathway to get estrogen out that can mimic estrogen dominance, and that will kind of like stunt those thyroid hormones. It'll prevent them from being made into their active form. It'll prevent them from doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if someone has high estrogen, or just estrogen to progesterone ratios are off, those pathways are off, that can cause a thyroid, issue. So we need to correct that before the thyroid's really going to get any better. And then same exact thing with like insulin. If there's insulin resistance, that can cause a thyroid issue. So if that HbA1c number is really high, then that'll cause some issues. And you and I have done, we did our blood sugar, glucose, insulin resistance video, and talked a lot about that HbA1c number. So I encourage people to watch that video to kind of learn more about what those symptoms look like and how that can kind of drive a lot of different issues in the body. And it just creates a lot of inflammation. And, if that thyroid is your weak genetic link, then anything else that's off in the body is going to aggravate that link and break that link, but we can strengthen those links so that those weak genes don't express themselves by figuring out what the heck is aggravating it in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so now explain it to me like I'm 5.
Oh, that wasn't like you were. Too much
No,
insulin, bad. Infections, bad.
it's funny how all this stuff is tied together, and with people I talk to, we usually start with kidneys, or we start with something, something that pops up more frequently. But like, as you peel back the layers of this, we see, okay, thyroid's off, or maybe it's okay, but all these other things like your hormones, your estrogen, what else? Insulin. Just like there's a lot of this that all ties together. You have adrenal fatigue. It's that circuit we talked about last week, even with sleep.
Yeah.
What's the process called again? The anterior pituitary.
Oh, so like the HTP axis, or the pituitary adrenal axis, pituitary adrenal thyroid axis, yeah, or hypothalamus pituitary adrenal.
It's weird. It's like everything's.
There's many different axes, but yeah. So yeah, if one is like off in left field, then the rest just kind of go down the toilet. Like you need all the legs of your stool for your stool to stand upright. If you kick one out, then it's gonna tip right over. So yeah, we need to look at this is really a fantastic example of the body working as one whole cohesive unit, and why it's so detrimental to try to compartmentalize these things. Because we see this with thyroid all the time. Like, you cannot just take the thyroid and be like, I'm just treating this. Who cares about this other stuff? I'm just going to work on this thing right here, because you need all these other things to be working correctly for the thyroid to work correctly. So I think that thyroid dysfunction is a perfect example why specialties and compartmentalizing everything doesn't work. It's a broken system, and why so many people don't get better.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a great example because, hey, I got a thyroid issue. I heard, you just take a lot of iodine, you're great. Like it'll fix it. Well, what about everything else? Like,
Yeah.
the tip of the iceberg here. What's below the surface?
Yeah.
Uh,
and take like a ton of iodine, and then you push yourself into hyperthyroidism. Like there's such a thing as too much of a good thing. And iodine is a perfect example of that. Like it's necessary, it's definitely needed, and there's enough, and then there's way too much. Like there's really no in between. So it can really, it's enough until it isn't. And then it's way too much, So that's one thing, people are pounding iodine or they're eating Brazil nuts for selenium. But if your gut is malfunctioning,
are you gonna absorb it?
You're not absorbing the selenium from the Brazil nuts. And most people with a thyroid issue, have a genetic component where their thyroid is their weak genetic link. Now that again doesn't mean that you're doomed to have a thyroid issue, because we can manipulate the genes. But oftentimes if you have that thyroid issue, your body doesn't absorb selenium well. And so eating the Brazil nuts isn't putting in the form of the selenium that your body can actually utilize and absorb. So it's not really doing much of anything, And if you have leaky gut, which most people with thyroid issues do, you're not absorbing that anyway, even if you could genetically.
Yeah, so it's a waste.
Yeah. So you need to kind of unwind this from the inside out, start with the liver, start with the gut. What's your reverse T3 to free T3 ratio? I always like to look at that, because then I know what the driver is. We want to look at the food sensitivity panel. Okay, do we have a leaky gut? To what severity? Okay, well, that helps us to know if the body is able to utilize nutrients, if the thyroid is starving, if the pituitary is starving, the adrenals are starving. Look at a hormonal panel, see what's going on there with the estrogen and with the adrenals. And then look at that thyroid panel to know, A, do we have antibodies right now at this point in time? B, what is our reverse T3 to free T3 ratio? Because then we know, okay, do we just have to assess gut function and, clean up the ecosystem of the gut, get rid of infections, grow that villi back, get rid of the leaky gut, all of that good stuff? Or do we have to address the liver as well, because there's way too much reverse T3? So knowing all these things and doing all those panels really helps us to figure out what our plan of action should be for that individual.
So it's complicated.
It's a little complicated.
So you're saying I probably shouldn't do something like this on my own and try to just figure it out myself, order a test, just kind of run with it, right?
I mean, if you want to bang your head against a wall for a bunch of years, you can try to do that. But I mean, it's a web, you can have 100 different people with the same diagnosis. They're on the same medication, and 100 different, those same 100 people have 100 different reasons why they have that diagnosis. We're not all the same. And that diagnosis is just a label, hypothyroidism. Okay. So low thyroid function. Fantastic. Why? Sometimes we have to look to the breakdown of the label. And then people get frustrated because they're like, oh yeah, that doesn't tell me anything. Like colitis, colon inflammation. Fantastic. Why? Yeah, exactly. So why is this happening? The body doesn't do something for no reason. Let's figure out the reason, instead of just putting a label on it and then just kind of laying down and taking it. Oh, I have this. Okay, cool. Let's figure out why.
Exactly.
So we're little detectives. That's our area of expertise. So talk to me about the Wei Lab herbal protocol for thyroid.
So it's just a one product protocol, right?
Is it?
No.
I'm like, I don't think it is.
No, it's complicated, right? So depends on what we're looking for. But typically we'll use an alternation of brown and Java for a standard thyroid protocol. We'll do that with LC balancer. And that helps to kind of reset the immune system, support like liver stagnation, liver function. But that's, we'll use that for the autoimmune. So I think we've talked about those in the past, but I can briefly touch on, so like the Java, one of the biggest things we use it for is anything spleen, anything lymphatic, helping to clear out autoantibodies and kind of flush that out of the system so it's not so dysregulated.
Yeah.
And then I think it also, so there's an herb in Java that helps to restore the levels of TNF alpha and IL-6, so inflammatory cytokines, which helps to basically maintain the balance of Th1 and Th2 immune responses. So like it specifically does help with thyroid. The other one,
and the cytokines are really like the inflammation drivers. So if we can calm those guys down, and then Th1, Th2 is part of the immune system. It's kind of like a teeter-totter. So if there's autoimmunity, one is way up here and the other is way down here. So we need to like balance that back out. So it's kind of looking from multiple different angles.
Exactly. And balance it out, and then we'll hit liver, and then we'll hit spleen. But that part of the protocol covers the what, typically. Now we got to look, okay, what's the why? Is it gut? Is it infections? Is it, I've seen kidneys be a cause of it.
Yeah.
And then obviously liver stress. So that is going to cover the liver stress component to it. Because we also use the brown, and the brown is pretty good at improving actual thyroid function. And it also helps with autoantibodies, cytokines on top of what we saw with the Java, but blood circulation, and then helping to improve liver function. So there's more than what I've talked about, but we don't have all day. So if there's more we want to dive into, give us a call. But yeah,
personalize it. So
yeah, right. And in a general level, that's what we'll work on. But if there's other things we know off the bat, of course, hit the GI, clear it out. And then we got to look at what kinds of infections.
Yeah.
So we can do it.
Yeah. Looking at those
Yeah.
stool panels that are super fun to do and seeing what kind of bugs we have walking around in there. And then we know what to do. Walking around. Yeah.
Crawling.
I just imagine them like dancing around in your guts. So.
Oh yeah.
Put a stop to that party. So if we know specifically what infections we have going on in the gut, then we know exactly what to give you to kill those instead of just like broad spectrum. Oh, take wormwood, okay, well, is what I have going to be killed off by wormwood? I don't know, because I don't know what I have. So it's important to know what you have. It's important to know what's in your gut.
Sure. Very important.
Yeah. So if anybody has some thyroid issues that they want to tackle, or anybody that has some thyroid struggles that they might want to tackle, have them reach out to myself and or to Colton, and we can get you set up with a really solid protocol. We both do free consultations where we can really just figure out what is going to be the best plan of action for you. Because like I said, you can have 100 people with the same diagnosis and 100 different reasons for it. So what we do with one person with a thyroid issue isn't necessarily going to be the same thing that we do with another person. So that's why we want to have that consultation so we can really learn the health history, chain of events, all that good stuff, so that we know what to recommend in terms of panels and products. So you can shoot me an email at thole.erin@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, erinthole.com, to request that free consultation. You can also call Colton.
Yep.
At.
You should know it by now.
612-808-9235.
Okay, good.
Reverse.
There. Do it
Is
in
that
reverse.
right?
No, that's right.
That's right. Okay. Sometimes I get the last four like flipped around.
5,
That's
3,
right.
2, 9. Yeah. So call the one that Erin said. That's
I'll put
my
it on
number.
the video too, so people can see it. Because now we're confusing people. So I'll put the correct one on the video. So,
It's probably good.
yeah. All right.
Ready.
Fantastic. I hope this helped you all out. And feel free to subscribe, like, share the knowledge.